and welcome back to the Rest Day with Jack Haig. Now, there's not much going on at this time of year in the cycling world other than a few transfer rumours, particularly this year. So it's been a bit slow on trying to get some new guests and new ideas for creating this episode. But thanks to everyone on the Escape Collective Discord. You guys helped provide some really nice questions to answer. And I got Harry Sweeny back on. I think everybody really enjoyed his interview I did 2 episodes ago, as well as the most recent one with Alex Dowsett. I got a lot of really good feedback from that. Now, this one, we go into talking about what happened after the Vuelta a España for Harry, how his first year in EF went, and then talking a little bit about the off-season, what we get up to, and then at the end, we answer quite a few of the Escape Collective Discord questions that you guys submitted there. For myself, I think I said in the podcast with Harry that I was going on to do World Championships and the Italian Classics. Unfortunately, I ended up getting quite sick after the Vuelta. I ended up having to take a bit of time off the bike, and then I started training again, trying to get ready for the Italian Classics after I called the Australian coach, Matt Heyman, and said that I think it's probably better trying to send someone else for Worlds. And I actually submitted Harry's name there because I thought he'd been riding super good, and we go into more of that with him. So I didn't really do much racing after Vuelta, and I ended up having a bit of my off season, and now I'm starting to look at my bike, thinking about trying to get back on it after taking about 3 or 4 weeks without riding. I've been doing a little bit of running, a little bit of gym, hanging out with the family. Normally, I really like to go on a long holiday. It helps me sort of rest and recover and reset a little bit, get away from home and just enjoy a little bit of time with the family, not really thinking about much else. But this year, been a little bit different. We've actually got quite a few weddings. I'm now at that age where a lot of my friends are getting married. So basically, the holiday's been traveling to and from weddings. I got a couple more coming up. Some cyclists, some non-cyclists. So that's kind of been keeping me busy. And then other than that, I've been just resting, hanging out, enjoying time with my son Liam, cleaning the garage, and just living a bit of a quote-unquote normal life, taking Liam to school, not really worrying about training, recovery, and it's quite nice. We spend a majority of our year, or I do anyway, quite strict and quite concentrated on our job and analysing everything that we do, making sure we're trying to get better, and it's actually quite nice to just switch off and not hyper-analyse everything. Of course, it's always in the back of your mind, but I just try to stay healthy and enjoy living a bit of a normal life. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this episode with Harry. I think I'll try and get another one out maybe in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Like I said, there's not really a whole lot going on this time of year. Maybe I can find Pavel Sivakov again. He's just finished also an amazing year with UAE, his first year with UAE. So maybe I can go chat with him once he gets home after a bit of a holiday, seeing as we both live quite close to each other here in Andorra. If you have any other questions you'd like me to answer, please jump on the Escape Collective Discord, go in there. I try to respond to them all when I can, and then I try to answer them more in detail on this podcast. Anyway, enjoy this one, guys. Thanks. All right, welcome back, Harry Sweeny. Back by popular demand. The last podcast we did got a lot of really nice feedback, so I thought I'd hit you up for a off-season podcast to see what you've been up to, see how the season finished off, and it was also the first year you had with EF Education. How'd it go?
Thanks for having me back on. It's been a really nice year. I think when I look back on my career so far, it's been the best in terms of how I felt in the peloton as a rider. I think it was the first year where I didn't have some sense of not belonging in the peloton. So that was really nice. And yeah, from a team perspective, I fit in incredibly well at EF. I love the team. The philosophy suits. I think everything fits well. And I also fill a gap in the team that they had. And yeah, I couldn't be happier here.
So a positive change then from Lotto Soudal at the time. Now, you said it just before that it was you felt really comfortable and you had some good results, but it's also probably your best season in terms of just if you look at the pure results from Pro Cycling Stats, especially towards the end of the season. You had a really strong welter, which we touched on in the previous podcast, but also you did Tour of Luxembourg, where you rode GC for yourself, right?
Yeah, so I finished the Vuelta and I had basically nothing on my calendar until I wanted to do the 5 monuments in one season. So I wanted to finish at Lombardia. And yeah, finished Vuelta. And then the director at Vuelta said to the team, like, he has to race again soon. He's going super well. So I called up and I just said, like, hey, I really want to race Luxembourg. I know everyone wants to do it. They're using it for Worlds. Like, can I go? And yeah, they said, yeah, you can go. And I wasn't expecting to ride for myself because I'm a domestique. And yeah, the day before the race or 2 days before I got the call, like, yeah, we're going to ride for you doing GC. And I looked at the start list. So I was like, haha, like, what do you want? Like top 25 or something. And it was the first time in 4 years of my career that I had anybody ride for me. I've never had, not even a single guy. I've never had like you can sort of like do what you want. It's just, I ride for someone else and that's it. And yeah, it went really well. I mean, I finished just behind Hershey and Vanderpool and yeah, a few other guys. Like there was like 5 or 6 guys from the top 20 in the UCI points rankings there. So it wasn't an easy field. And yeah, it sort of opened my eyes a little bit that I can do other stuff. You know, like it was really similar to the world's parkours, really, like circuits, steep climbs, short climbs. And yeah, for me, it was nice to, for the first time in my career, have someone actually like believe that I can do something that's not just like drop someone off at the bottom of a climb. So yeah, that was really cool.
Do you think you'll try and arc for some more responsibility going forward now into some races, or you'll try and target something next year? Is that something you've already spoken about with the team, or something that you're going to speak about probably in pre-season training camps?
I think that'll be pre-season training camps. I think they've been very cautious to not put any mental load before the off season. I mean, I've been thinking about it a little bit personally, but I think it's like having done the year that I did, I think the mental switch off is super important for me. So we haven't spoken about it yet, but I am looking forward to it because I think I don't trust myself as much as I should, because I was never going to say I'm riding GC at Luxembourg and they had to do that for me. So it makes me think like, what are they going to say that I should target and what do I think I can, because I don't actually know what I think I can. So yeah, it's actually going into off season. I have like some personal ambition for next year, which is like to actually ride for myself once every 10 races or something, or like not even that, just once ride for myself in the year. And yeah, I think that's a good start for me, is that I can go into the off season and actually be like, I'm working to help myself as well.
What are the races that you maybe get the most excited about when you think about this? Like what style of racing, or like you don't need to say like a specific race that next year you want to target, but like something that you're thinking now, or like fantasizing a little bit about, like what's exciting for you when you think about being a leader or like having that opportunity?
Well, I mean, when I look at just like purely numbers, it's really more the Flemish classics, but then in reality, for me, the harder a race is in terms of like not stopping, the better I feel in the race and relative to other guys. Like I feel better in Liège or a hillier, harder race than I do in a race that's easier with some short climbs in it. So it's really difficult to say. But I think in the Ardennes or races like Brabant-Sepil, I have a soft spot for Roubaix, but that also, I don't know if I'd say it suits me, but I also don't really know what does suit me at this point. Like I think I always thought that the further into my career I got, the more I would know what I'm really good at. And I know I'm really good at positioning, but apart from that, I'm just like, I'm getting more confused almost.
Did you find it difficult mentally to change from always being that domestique to then being put into that leadership role? Because the way of racing is quite different when you're a leader compared to a domestique.
I think I was in a position to be more appreciative of what the guys were doing, because I have always been in a position of helping people, and like sometimes I feel like they don't get how deep some of the domestiques have to go, especially to do a job where it's like you protect them all day and then you're still there at the crucial point to drop them off. That is like, for me, when I was having other people do it, I was like, oh, man, like, thank you so much. And yeah, I feel like it gave me a little bit of understanding on what it was like to have the pressure of the whole team riding for you, because I've never experienced that before. It's like, if I get to the last day and I lose even 20 or 30 seconds in Luxembourg, it was all over. So I was like, wow, I really don't want to be responsible for this. But yeah, it definitely got more out of me, because I found myself, there was a lot of days where Hershey was just like whacking at every single climb. And I had just had to get dropped and like ride my own pace. And I definitely got more out of myself.
The appreciation thing is something that I also learned through my career. And it's also something that I always try to do when I'm made a leader, is just the small like thank you or like acknowledgement goes such a long way when you have been in that helper role and the leader tells you like thanks. Like, to the leader, saying thanks is nothing. It's just a couple of words. Yeah. But you feel so appreciated, or you feel like you were part of achieving something or helping the leader do well, that whenever I get that opportunity, I always try to do it. So it's actually pretty good that you thought about that. And it is very different mentally to race as a leader, because you're always, like you said, thinking about arriving, not losing time. Any little mistake can screw up the GC, like you said, especially in races like Luxembourg, where it's decided by such small margins that if you make a small mistake, that's the difference between being top 10 and 30th. Yeah. And then you're like, well, now I've let down my entire team who's been working for me for the last 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, it's definitely different. And also this year was the first time where I ever helped anyone in GC as well, like Carapaz in the Vuelta. So it really, I would say, it gave me purpose every day, if not anything else. Like every day went way quicker than it was when I was in Lotto and I was with like Caleb, and we were just trying to get around that day and like not getting time cut. So yeah, for me, it was really different and also really engaging. So yeah, I have to say I liked it.
Now, you didn't get to complete the 5 monuments in 1 year because your last race was Worlds. What happened with Lombardia? Did you just decide you want to have a break?
But no, I actually got really sick after the Worlds. I woke up and I had a bit of a tickle in my nose and my throat, and then I was pretty much bedridden for like 5 days. And I was still super motivated because like I felt really good. Like Worlds was probably one of my better feelings I ever had in a one-day race. And yeah, I got to maybe a week out from Lombardia and I was still like creeping around, like going down to Lavera and back for a coffee ride, and my lungs were burning. And at that point, I decided with the team, I was like, it's not really worth it to push on and get into a hole before the off season just to do 5 monuments in a year. And yeah, I mean, in the end, I was happy that I called it. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing, but like it was also really nice to finish on Worlds, especially with Benno on the podium. Like that was insane.
I wanted to ask you about Worlds. Was it the first Elite Worlds you've done?
No, it was my third. So
sorry.
I did the Belgian Worlds in Leuven.
Yeah.
Then I did Worlds last year, which was like horrible. Mm-hmm. Hated it. And then Worlds this year, I think. Yeah, I mean, you sent me a message saying that you were feeling sick and put my name in the raffle for it. And I think on paper, the selectors were thinking like, this is not really a Worlds that I can help in. But I thought even from the start of the year that this was like one of the Worlds that I could actually help in, because yeah, I mean, last year really wasn't my type of race circuit. But yeah, this year was awesome. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I always enjoyed racing Worlds as well, but similar to your experience after Worlds, I got very sick after Vuelta. Yeah. And then that was one of the reasons why I pulled myself out and then put your name up there. And yeah, it looks like you guys had a really good race. How was the overall experience? And do you enjoy leaving your like trade team environment at EF to then go into a new environment with the Australian team? Because in the end, you never are teammates essentially with these Australian guys for other than this one race a year. And then you become teammates. Do you enjoy that experience, leaving the EF and becoming an Australian?
Yeah, it's really nice. To me, it feels like what I think it would feel like on Jayco when it was the first Jayco with like backstage pass and all that sort of stuff. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I think the biggest thing is that in the days before is like finding that team environment and the mateship. And I think that really is the difference on the day, whether you can get a result or not.
I always really enjoy doing the national team stuff. And I don't know if it's an Australian thing or not, but I feel as though there's quite a few Australian World Tour pros and pro continental riders, but we generally always get along quite well. And I've always enjoyed that environment where you get to see new faces, you see new ideas, you have different conversations than you have in your team. And I don't know, just being in that Australian environment, it's always a bit special.
Oh yeah, it's definitely different. I think you get the same jokes, you speak the same language, there's no barrier at all. And yeah, I mean, on the day, it's like you just feel the morale from the whole team, and yeah, it's special.
So it's been what, 5 or 6 weeks since Worlds?
Yeah, at least. Yeah, I'd say
at least 6 weeks. I think it's been. What have you been up to?
Oh, I got back bedridden for a week, and then I started my off season. I didn't really do much the first week, I wouldn't say. I had Nick Schultz's Bucks party a couple of nights ago. Then what did I do? I sold my car, bought a new GR Yaris, which has been great fun. I've been driving that a lot. I had my collarbone played out, so had surgery, as you did.
Yeah.
And that's taken me to today. And yeah, I have 2 weddings coming up. So busy.
We've actually got very similar off seasons because I also got my collarbone plate taken out, and I've also got a few weddings coming up. So very similar off seasons. Now, you've been pro a few years now. You've had a few off seasons, breaks at the end of the season. What have you done in the past? And has there been any bad experiences that you've been like, I probably shouldn't have done that in that off season, like that probably set me back? Or is there anything that stands out from the couple of off seasons you've had?
I religiously take 4 weeks every off season. 4 weeks off the bike. I do 2 weeks pretty much nothing, and then 2 weeks I start like running, a bit of hiking, mountain biking maybe, and skiing. But I've not had bad experiences, but I've seen what guys have done that have like ruined the first part of their next year, which is usually like putting on way too much weight. But I've never been someone to do that anyway. I mean, one of my favorite bits about not training is not having to like obsess over whether I'm eating enough food or like eating the right food. So yeah, now I wake up and have a coffee, and if I'm really excited to go drive my car, I just drive my car, and then I get home and I might be starving, and I just eat what I feel like. And for me, it's just like trusting my intuition that I'm not doing something wrong, and also not feeling guilty if I wake up one day and don't feel like going for a run or a hike and I just sit inside all day. So yeah, I wouldn't say that there's anything that I've done really wrong, but more so just each off season, I just learn that if I feel like doing it, I should.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, like you said, everyone's seen the odd person mess up the off season, and it can really set you back. But yeah, I have a very similar off season approach where I try to take more or less 4 weeks off the bike and then sort of slowly get back into it after that. Now, have you had any extravagant holidays in your off seasons or destinations, maybe in the previous ones? Or is there anywhere that you're looking forward to in the coming off seasons that you're like, I really want to go there?
I did a mid-season break in Greece this year, which was pretty cool. But I don't know, like, I'm not huge on destination holidays. Like, I really love traveling, but often I hit the off season and I'm so tapped out with travel, and I just want to sit at home and like have fun with my mates. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's anywhere that I particularly want to go, but I think it's more for me, like I have to wait until I've done like 3 or 4 weeks where I'm getting to the point where I'm bored, and then I go away. Like I would almost prefer to go somewhere when I'm just starting to train again, because I know that I feel fresh. But if I had to like finish the year and hop on a plane to go to Morocco or something, I would just be like, oh, I just want to be at home.
I feel as though there's like 2 types of people with off seasons. And one is like the holiday person that like is planning to basically go from the finish their last race directly to the airport to like some destination. Or there's the off-season person that goes, finishes the race and then goes directly home and then doesn't want to look at a suitcase for 3 weeks.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. We've got a couple of questions from the Escape Collective Discord. Now, one of them was around coaching. I kind of answered this question myself and how Bahrain does it on the Discord channel, but I thought I'd ask you, how does coaching work in EF, and how do they decide race programs, and how do they work with the sports directors?
Okay, so on EF, we have internal coaches. You don't have to work with one, but I always do because there is a clear advantage in communication between the coaches and the team. So we sit down with, say, 12 directors that we have, or 10 directors, in the same room with our coach at the start of at the preseason camp in November or December. We outline the whole race program, and that's decided with everybody. Then when we get into the year, there's always changes. Like, no calendar stays how it is at the start of the year. So our head director, Charlie Wigilius, he is the one who decides most of the program. So in the year, if you have a request, you ask Charlie, and your coach can talk to him as well, because obviously the directors talk to your coach and they say, how's he going? And also vice versa. Like, your coach can call them up and be like, he's flying, you need to put him in. And we all have an allocated director that communicates anything else to our team as well. So for the most part, like, say you're in the selection for the Tour de France, your coach and the doctor will always be like updating your group around you, how you're going. And then from there, the panel will decide.
Is the coach your point of contact at the team? So like, if you need anything related to the team, do you always contact your coach, or do you have someone in the team that, like, with anything? So like, for example, if you want to know your race program or your aeroplane tickets or something like this, do you go to your coach, or is there multiple people that you contact in the team?
Multiple, but I don't go to my coach for my race program unless I want to change something. So he finds out the program from the directors. So it really depends. Like, if I need equipment, there's an equipment person in the team. If I go for performance, there's a performance director in the team. Then there's the doctor in the team. And it really depends, like, what I want as to who I go to. And I really prefer that, because I think there's not one person in the team that can do absolutely everything. And if they are, they're probably like a bit overworked. So yeah, now I can go to whoever I need to ask for something.
All right. I've got a question here about the rider union and the relationship between the riders and the union. And then maybe to discuss some of the more high profile, like, stage neutralizations and weather situations. And then are there things that happen behind the scenes that maybe the fans don't hear about?
The Riders Union is the CPA, not the Riders Union that just took everyone's money and did nothing.
So maybe we'll put a bit of context here. There was a union called the Riders Union that you elected to be a part of, and you paid money to them, but nothing ended up really eventuating from it. And now we have Adam Hansen, who is the head of the CPA. Yeah. And he's doing quite a good job, I think, from my point of view. So that's kind of the rider union now, or the union for the riders.
Yeah, I agree. I think Hansen's doing an awesome job. I mean, I didn't really see enough of what cycling was like before, but you always hear, because the older guys in the bunch are just like, the CPA is just rubbish. And then Hansen's come in, and it's actually, you can visibly see things that happen, like neutralizations in races. I think the biggest thing that he's doing behind the scenes is working with those crash algorithms that they can analyze a course and detect where is a danger point and put like more signage, barriers and everything there. But I've not really been a part of a lot of races that have actually been stopped. I mean, Flesh was a bit borderline this year, but I think Hansen's doing a great job.
You haven't done enough Giro d'Italias.
Zero Giro d'Italias, actually.
I've been a part of a few stage shortens and discussions with the CPA around, mostly at the Giro, to be honest. And it's normally around bad weather and snow. There was quite a few maybe high profile ones that happened last year that people were maybe saw on TV. I think Hansen's doing a really good job at the moment. It's a really difficult job to try and bridge what the riders want, what race organizers want, what the UCI wants. And there's obviously a lot of financial stuff in the background that maybe the riders also don't really see with insurance for races, because obviously if we don't want to do the race is paid or received money from towns to start there. And if we don't start, there's many implications that we don't maybe understand.
Yeah, it's not as straightforward as like they just want us to crash and die. Like that we have to also take into account that like it's our sport that is not getting the publicity that we need if we don't start races. So I think the balance is really important.
Now, I had Alex Dowsett on the podcast, and he was mentioning about using non-team branded equipment such as skin suits to get the fastest skin suit. Have you been a part of a team where that was involved, or have you just heard of maybe other products, whether that's nutrition related, or how often do you see other teams maybe implementing non-sponsor equipment for performance?
You see it occasionally, but to me, it really depends on one, whether it's in the contract of the team, which is a massive one. Like in EF, we don't really have contracts like that. It's like you use the equipment that you have. And then it's a rider contract where, for example, Camp and Arts, I've heard like if something's not as quick, he gets to use the quicker item. But for me personally, I'd prefer to actually just give feedback, even if it's a bit harsh, to the equipment manufacturer or the clothing, and just say like, can we please change this? Or like, I would really like to have this. And I find that it's just better than having the headache of like trying to ask for permission to use stuff and go through the rigmarole of like get permission and then like the sponsor's not happy. And I'm not really interested in the stress of that.
I think it happened more often in the past, mostly around nutrition stuff. But I think now, as nutrition science has got better and better, the companies are making better nutrition products and riders are having less problems. But I remember when I started, there was quite a few riders using non-team sponsored nutrition because they just either through like a placebo thing that they just decided they didn't like it, or they actually didn't like it. They used a different product. Now, what do you think was the biggest eureka moment when you turned pro that has let you become a better athlete? For example, was that knowledge of nutrition, workload, the mental side? What was something that maybe changed cycling for you when you turned pro?
I think the nutrition side of it, I was already really into before I even turned pro. Like I was really on top of training high carb, even in, I don't know, probably back in 2019, I reckon I was racing on 120 grams of carbs back then, which was pretty early. But in terms of like my actual career, I vividly remember that my whole under 23 period, I was like quite unhappy because I didn't pay attention to like my normal life and having something to do in Europe because I was so tunnel vision about becoming pro. And I remember I got to my apartment in Nice. I'd never been there before. Caleb just dropped me off. It was my first time in Nice. And that week was like, I remember having like a mental breakdown. Like I was crying on the phone to my parents and I was like, I don't even want to be a pro. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? And then that was a moment where I was like, I spent 21 years or 20 years of my life in like a state where I was just like trying to get somewhere. And I didn't focus on building my life. And I had like 15 years of my life in Australia where I built it without even knowing. And now I was starting from scratch. It was like, now I'm actually in Europe for like the foreseeable future. I need to build a life. So then it was like, I need to buy a car. I need to buy kitchen stuff. I need to buy everything. And like, to me, it was I think I listened to a podcast maybe with the Stanley Street Social maybe. And someone on there said like, the first year of your career, don't try and save any money. All you need to do is invest. I mean, obviously I wasn't making 150 grand. I was making 36,000 euro or something. So it was like, spend every dollar you can on investing in yourself and your happiness. And that's what I did. And yeah, even today, if I think something will genuinely make me happy, I'm not afraid to buy it. But I mean, that doesn't obviously go for everything, but I'm talking about stuff like I buy a nice knife because I like cooking every day. So I'm going to do that. And yeah, actually taking care of my personal life is the biggest thing.
That was also one of the things that I did when I turned pro as well, that I was pretty committed on just making Europe my home. And like I saw so many guys that were Australian or American that would come just for 8 months, like the minimum possible. As soon as the last race day is done, they fly back home and they only fly in just before the first race day in Europe. And they were never really happy in Europe because they never built a home, because during the season we spend so much time traveling and racing that you're never actually getting to know the community where you live. You're just basically renting an apartment that's essentially a hotel room that you just come back to, train a little bit, do washing, and then leave again. Whereas yeah, I also committed a lot to making Europe home, spending time outside of racing there, trying to build friends in a community, and yeah, just begin a new life, similar to what you said.
It's easier said than done, though. It's not an easy thing to do.
It's very hard to do. And you need to put yourself in quite a few uncomfortable positions, trying to meet new people. There's always a language barrier there as well. And like you said, it's quite hard, like especially coming from Australia. We're so far away from the comforts of friends and family at home and everything that you know how, like just in Australia, you just know how things are done. Whereas in Europe, there's a different culture, there's a different way of thinking, there's a different language. And yeah, you can be put into some uncomfortable decisions sometimes. Now, how do you feel about amateur cyclists approaching you during training, both on the bike and off the bike, for example, at a cafe? Like having someone, for example, you're out riding, you pass an amateur, and then he decides to jump on your wheel. Do you find that annoying? Or if they come to say hello to you at a cafe?
Anyone that comes to say hello, I have no problem at all. I mean, I remember what I was like before I was pro, and I would see a pro and you're just like so excited. But I would just say like, have like a little bit of awareness that like you can still just say hello to them. You know, like I've had situations where you're just riding along and you're like talking about something private and people are just following. They don't say hello or don't even ask. But like, I've never said no to anyone that asked to sit on, but I've got pissed when someone's followed me for 60 kilometers back to my house. And I'm like, mate, like, come on. And yeah, I just think like, if that was my missus and she was running and someone started following her, I'd be so angry. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a popular thing to say, but yeah, I just would say like, just say hello, be like, can I sit on? And they're never going to say no. Like,
I have a similar approach where sometimes it's a little bit annoying when they just say nothing and they just want to be there. And it just gets a little bit awkward and weird. And a similar thing that like, we're also working. Like, yes, okay, like a lot of people do it as a hobby, but it'd be also kind of weird if someone just like sat behind you at your desk and just like watched you work. And like what you said, like it'd be super weird if your girlfriend was out running and someone just started running behind her and followed her home. Like that'd be really creepy. But then people seem to think that it's appropriate on the bike. Anyway, I'm also generally very happy to meet someone new. And if someone wants a photo or someone wants to shake my hand at a coffee shop or just have a chat, I'm always open to it. But just be polite and respectful.
Absolutely.
That's basically it. There was a recent article released on the Escape Collective around rider safety and the lack of progression in terms of making things safer. What do you think of the current situation in racing with the safety? Yeah,
I don't think it's great. I think there's been so many deaths in the last, say, 16 months, like 3 or even 4, I think. And yeah, I remember like everyone always like defaults to like F1 safety or something, for example. But like, I think it's a fair point. Like when the Halo came in, for example, there was like F1 purists that were like, this is an absolute disgrace. But I think for things to get safer, there has to be decisions made that aren't popular and probably even the riders won't like. And I don't really know what they would be, and I also think it'd be quite expensive to implement in our sport, but I think it has to be done. Like, for example, this algorithm that Hansen's doing could look something like every dangerous point on a descent has to have barriers that you can't go over the side of a mountain. That would be super expensive to implement and probably really unpopular, but like if it saves lives, it's probably worthwhile doing. And I think it needs work.
I think the biggest challenge our sport has is that it's just conducted on public roads and that we're not doing it in the same place over and over again. And I brought this up, I think, in our previous podcast, where I really think that there could be a bit of a future to do with circuit racing. And if you have a 10K circuit, it's much easier to remove 10 pieces of furniture in that 10Ks that we do 60 times rather than remove 60 pieces of furniture along a 60-kilometer route.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is what I'm saying is it'd be hugely unpopular to do stuff on a circuit, but like maybe that is the future of our sport, because I think if it does keep going the way it's going, it won't last a super long time.
I don't really understand the unpopularity of it, because every single year we have world championships and it's on a circuit.
Yeah,
and it's arguably one of the biggest races of the year. And I'm not saying like when you do criterium racing, like you can still make a circuit really interesting. Like look at the 2 Canadian races that we have, the one-day races. You have more like puncher style. It's Quebec. Yeah. Quebec. And then you have the more climbing style in Montreal. And they're both circuit races. And I think they're both entertaining.
They are great races, especially to be part of as well.
And I also think that it doesn't have to be just a circuit. You can ride 60 kilometers or 100 kilometers from one start to the circuit and then do 40 or 60 kilometers on the circuit. And I think also you see way less crashes because the riders know what's coming up. You're never coming around a corner that's blind when the race is getting close to the finish and the speed's getting higher and people are racing for position, because the first lap you do, it's probably in the middle of the race and isn't that much stress.
Yeah, I do think you're right. Like for me, one of the biggest stresses is when there's a crunch point that people aren't really sure exactly what it looks like, or you've just heard on the radio, and then everyone's racing into some narrow bridge at 90k an hour. And that's always when the crazy crashes happen. So yeah, I think what you're saying does make sense. Like it just proves the point that like there's resistance to it, even if it like could look really good. So yeah, I don't know. Like I think something has to change, but I just don't know what it would actually be that can really save lives.
I'm also not sure. And I think there's a lot of people thinking about it. And like you said, there's going to be a lot of unpopular maybe proposals out there, but the sport does probably need to do something because like you said, there's been way too many bad accidents and deaths recently in the sport. And it'd be really nice to see the sport change to become both a better economical sport in terms of getting sponsorship money in and generating revenue. And that can maybe be done with circuit racing, but also from a safety point of view, because the sport's definitely getting faster with all the equipment changes that we've got. Yeah. There's also more and more information out there. Like you said, when it comes to pinch points in certain races, we all have meetings in the buses with Street View, with Velo Viewer. And when everyone's racing into this, quote unquote, like unknown danger or like pinch point in the race that seems critical, that's when the biggest crashes happen because the speed's really high, the stress is really high. No one wants to brake to give up that position because everyone's got the director in their ears telling them that they need to be at the front or get through. And also, as athletes, we want results for ourselves. So we also want to race to that point because we want to get through safely because we want to get a result.
I do think that we have the responsibility ourselves to make racing safer. But it's a hard thing in every sport is you have to risk to be there and to be good. And like, there's always the thing that's like, we create the danger for ourselves, which is true. But my job is to drop off the leader at the bottom of La Redoute in first position. And everybody else who's doing my job is going to be just as aggressive as me. And if I'm not also aggressive, not dangerous, there's a difference, but aggressive, I'm not going to be able to do my job. Then I don't get my income. I don't get to live. So like there's a balance. And I think the yellow card system can be good on this because there is genuinely a difference between being aggressive and just being downright dangerous. And yeah, that's important.
You bring up a very good point there about it is our job. And as there's more and more money involved in the sport, there's more and more incentive to take more risk to do your job better because then you can get a better salary, which then leads to one, being personally satisfied that you're progressing in the sport, but also making more income. And I think as well, you make a good point about the yellow card system. And there's a difference between being aggressive and dangerous and having mutual respect and understanding that you are putting people in danger when you're doing a disrespectful or dangerous move. So I don't know. It'll be curious. And I really hope that it evolves next year and in the future with a yellow card system with Adam Hansen and the CPA and everything like this. But I'm not sure there's a correct answer at the moment.
No, I think there's so many variables that it's not straightforward at all.
Well, that basically wraps up all the questions that I got and probably wraps up the podcast. Thanks for coming on and enjoy the rest of your off season. Maybe before I go, what's the first week on the bike going to look like for you?
Ooh, the first week on the bike probably won't be much on the bike. It'll be, I like to keep running as long as I can in the off season. I mean, I was a triathlete, so I enjoy it. So yeah, a bit of mountain biking, riding. I'd probably ride maybe 4 days in the first week or maybe 5. and just no stress about it. Like even after my mid-season break, my first week or even 2 weeks is just, I don't want any structure. Just let me do my thing and I'll come to you when I'm ready. And I think that works because I'm not a guy that's just going to be like, upload a file from last year onto my Training Peaks.
Nah, it's a pretty balanced approach as well. I do a similar thing that just slowly integrate cycling back into my life, basically. And then people always maybe wonder, we also go through those struggles of not riding a bike for 4 weeks and you get on, and then your ass hurts a little bit because you're not used to sitting on the seat for a little bit. You get a sore neck because you're not used to riding the bike. Whereas during the season, that's stuff that you don't even think about because you used to spend 20 hours a week on the bike, and then all of a sudden you take 4 weeks off, and then riding on a weird position on your bike all of a sudden becomes a little bit uncomfortable.
For me, the one is like every December, or not even December, like November, I hop back on the bike and I'm like onto the Australian government website, like, how do I get into the army? Because I'm just like, I feel so bad. I'm like, I'm never going to be good again.
All right. This maybe would lead us into another podcast in the future about getting back into training and what the preseason looks like, but that'll probably do it now for the off-season edition.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for coming on.